How to plant. So let me pick up an easy one. Let's just go with this one. Here's how you plant. I've done a lot of planting this week. I've got a remodel job going on my whole side yard's been ripped a new one. So I've got a 20-year-old house, had some old stairs made out of pecky cedar, you know, that stuff rots. I've been stringing this thing along for probably about a decade, and it was just time. It's just time. And so I pulled up all the stairs and relayed pavers, which retaining block is trending now. In a decade from now, it'll be something else. I don't know, but for now, the cinder blocks, retaining blocks, is last longer. You get it in color, and it just looks good. It updates the gardens. Well, I had to rip out a whole bunch of raised beds. Every stair had a raised garden on either side. Well, all that had to go. So all those plants are gone. So I've been replacing those this week. Actually, this morning I planted one. So there's several. I got 3 more to go in. Right after this is a great time to be planting. The way I did it, the roots are going to go sideways. They are not going to go down. That taproot is a myth. It does not. There's no taproot. There's nothing that goes down. There's nothing down there for it. There's no water. There's no nutrients. There's just more caliche and rocks and boulders. It's just nothing. So that taproot goes down about 18 inches, and it hooks, and it's what I call it, a hockey stick. It almost looks like a big old root just starts going this way. And so that's why your native plants don't transplant. You can't go out and dig one up and transplant it in your yard, because when you start to dig this, that taproot, which is 100 feet long, you just severed it, and all the root structure's gone. You get this big tree with no roots. That's why you lose kind of 9 out of 10. If you're going to try that, go really, really small. So maybe the taproot's only this long. You can maybe capture it. But usually, like this is a native, we've grown this from seedlings, from a cutting, and to form this. So all the roots it's ever known is right here. So now this transplants, because you've got all the roots. The roots on this are going to go sideways. So you want to dig a hole about the same depth as the bucket. You don't need to go down very far, just this far. And then you want to dig it on a bucket on either side, saucer shaped. The plant has got to get used to your soil eventually. So you want to use all this native soil that you dug out. You want to reuse that so it gets adapted to your surrounding native, to your yard, basically. What I'll do is I'll take that dirt that I've dug out, I'll screen it. Anything bigger than a golf ball, I get out of there. Those things warm up in summer and they just bake the roots. They're too large of particles. They can't hold water molecules at all, so you want smaller particles when you're surrounding the root ball with that. So I'll screen that out. Some of you, you're not going to have any soil left. Some of you, you're doing pretty good. So, but screen that. Any old roots, anything organic in there, get rid of that. Because as old roots compost, they taint the soil. They actually release creosotes and all kinds of weird chemicals the plants don't want. So get rid of those old weeds, old roots, get rid of those. Now I'm going to amend that dirt to backfill around this. I'm going to amend that with mulch. Premium mulch. Now I have to define this for you Midwest folks. You define mulch as bark. You top dress every fall your gardens with mulch. We call that in the West bark. This is actually compost. So it's a dark, rich, composted material. We're harvesting this out of Taylor, Arizona. There's an old sawmill there. We're out harvesting the old 50-year-old tailings. We screen that down to ½ inch minus, and then that's what you're seeing with this. This is designed to add to our native soil. You blend in with your native soil so it keeps it from compacting right back down, so the roots can have time to get through all that. It also injects some organic material into your soil so we can hopefully recolonize your mycorrhizal colonies, attract worms, reinvigorate your soil. Some of you literally have dead soil. There's not one living thing you'll see. When you dig a hole, there's not one living thing. You'll need to activate that soil, and this is what does that, introducing organics. Okay, so about 1 shovel of this for every 3 shovels of native earth, or about 25%. So you can go up to about 50-50. So if you run into a big boulder, sometimes I'll get a big rock or something, I'm like, oh man, I need to supplement a little bit more. I can go up to about 50-50. After that, it gets too wet, it's too soggy, it's too much. There we'd want to switch and add some topsoil or something else. But most of us, 25 to 50% is good. Okay? Blend that in, and then backfill that root ball with that. Pack it, tamp it down. So the bigger the man, the better. Just pack that sucker down so you don't have any air pockets. Now right now, I did notice my soil is pretty dry. I've had a couple storms, maybe 1.5 inches of rain, but the soil in some parts of my yard were pretty dry. And so when I dug my hole before I backfilled, I actually hydrated that soil or that hole before I planted in it. So I filled it half full with water before I even put the plant in there, before I backfilled. I filled it with water. In fact, I set this root ball down in kind of a gooiness to it. And what I'm trying to do is hydrate the surrounding soil. So many times we'll put a wet plant in dry soil, the soil around it just wicks away the water almost instantly. And so your plant is left wanting, and no matter how much you water that plant, the surrounding soil just wicks that water away. So rehydrate, probably a summer thing that needs to do that, but hydrate that surrounding soil kind of helps. And notice, my name is Ken. We're just friends. We're neighbors talking over the back fence. This is kind of what's worked for me over the years. It kind of is a game changer. Now I'll backfill, pack that down. Here's another myth. This is the negative with having Phoenix so close to us. In Phoenix, they tell you to plant in a divot or a hole so you can rain harvest. First of all, we don't live 10 miles from the sun. Who would live where it's like 118 degrees out? That's crazy. Here we cool off at night. Even when on the hottest day, it'll still get in the 70s, 80s. It's been in the 60s this last week. So we cool right down. What that does is if your plant is sitting in a divot, it'll stay wet. It won't dry out. When it's 110 out at midnight, yeah, in Phoenix, it dries out. But here, you don't want to plant in a divot. You want that plant to be at level or even a little above level. So on this particular plant, I would actually plant this above grade. I would literally leave, especially that 69 corridor, the Granvilles, that whole valley area, that is such hard clay soil that if you're going to kill it, it'll be from staying too wet. It gets root rot. So what I would do there is I would leave a couple inches of root out of the ground. Then I would slightly mound the soil, surrounding soil up to the root. Is this making sense? Then I put my drip system on top of that, or I put my water basin just outside of that. So that way, if we do get some monsoon rains, eventually we're going to get some rain. It'll rain in the afternoon. You just had your drip irrigation going that afternoon, and all of a sudden this plant is way too wet, and it's got to go through the evening way too wet. And so you'll kill off your evergreens like that. That's a little secret that really, really works. At soil level or a little above, and make sure this root ball up here, make sure that's meant to be exposed. Don't bury it. This needs to breathe. So the rookie mistakes I find is they'll bury this thing up. They bury it too deep, and all of a sudden this is underground. It will get crown rot, root rot. There's all kinds of rots that happen. Plants breathe at their roots, and they need to breathe. This needs to be exposed. Okay, trust me, it really works. Now, when I'm all done packing that in, I will sprinkle some all-purpose plant food on this. Again, this will be the amount will be in this handout I'm giving to you here shortly. This would probably take about 5 tablespoons, kind of a handful, and I'll just sprinkle that. This is the long-term, this is an organic fertilizer I put together decades ago. This is cottonseed meal and bird guano and all kinds of good stuff. Every time you water over the next 3 months, it'll release just a little bit of food. It's also not synthetic. So synthetics are petroleum-based chemical products. Those actually kill off mycorrhizal colony. They kill off worms. So you do more damage with a 20-20-20 than you can good, especially when you're dealing with soil that needs to be invigorated. So this is organic food that encourages the beneficials to be healthy and encourages the plant to root more. So that's why you put that on. I'll water it all in with Root and Grow. When I'm all done, this is transplant shock. This bucket is the only thing it's known its entire life. So that's perfect. That is a perfect, it's not root bound at all. That's what you want to see. You know why that is? Because you're buying it from Waters Garden Center. You know that. Yeah, that's right. No, what happens is plants sometimes will get root bound. They'll start to go around in circles. What that is, when they're root bound, usually they'll be at a discounted price because it's last year's plant they couldn't sell. So they held it over for another year. Now it's got 2 years of root growth in this bucket. So the root's got to go somewhere. It just does this. If you see that, first of all, don't buy that plant. A little bit of roots at the bottom is okay. Sometimes you'll see it's not quite matted. I wonder if this one does that. Let's see. So you'll see a little bit of matting here some. It's not bad. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll just massage it on the bottom, like that. So I'm trying to open up these roots on the bottom. So water will come up through here, and then I'm breaking a few of the roots here, root pruning. So now where that root broke, it'll start sending off 2 or 3 roots from there. So I don't beat this up very much. So your grandparents, they had this thing of where they beat it up so much almost no soil was left. This is my baby, don't treat it like that. This is like the perfect root ball. This is what you want to see. Sometimes you'll see the bottom, I'll just massage it a bit. And then I'll plant it right in the ground just like that. Okay. Where was I going with that? Oh, this is a compost tea. So it looks like fish emulsion for you organic gardeners, but it doesn't have all the stink. So fish emulsion just smells bad. I just couldn't bring myself to putting that in my stuff. So this is a steeped organic tea. So it looks real thick, rich stuff. Again, we're trying to feed the mycorrhizal colonies. The worms, we're trying to track those. So this does that. And then it stabilizes this so it doesn't go into transplant shock. So it'll come out of it. I always mix, this is a liquid, 3 tablespoons in a gallon of water. I always mix this up before I even start. I have my 2-gallon watering can there, and I just have it already pre-mixed. After I'm done fertilizing, I'll water this thing in really well. And the very, very end, I'll water it in with root grow. I'll do this every 2 weeks until I see the plant has stabilized. And you'll know because it'll have new growth. You just see it's happy, it's taken. You're going, oh, I'm such a gardener. Oh, that's good. Then it doesn't need this anymore. That's when the food starts activating. Now, an insider tip, what I do, every one of my plants that I just planted, I actually at the bottom of the hole of every single one, I've probably planted 20 plants this week. Andinas, grasses, mums, all kinds of stuff. Lots of herbs. AquaBoost crystals, these are soil polymers. Polymers swell up and hold like 200 times their weight in water. So I like to put that at the bottom of the hole so it holds the moisture right there where the roots are. It takes the edge off of watering what it does. And then this is a product we make here locally too. This has been infused with mycorrhizal colonies as well. So we actually put the beneficials, we're trying to reseed. Our plants all have mycorrhizals in there because we know how important that is. So it's kind of the insider secret. Don't tell my competitors. But we inject that in the water so that when we water plants, you get mycorrhizal colonies. So we're trying to reseed our plants in your yard with mycorrhizal colonies so they're more prone to root. That's the reason Waters plants grow and some other places kind of die. That's one of the several reasons why. For me, in my gardens, I always buy one of these a year, and I'll sprinkle like a couple tablespoons in the bottom of every hole, kind of rub it in, put my plant on and backfill, just so I can I'm forcing the water to stay there. And mycorrhizals, what they do, there's a symbiotic relationship. We're going deep now with plants, with the roots. They actually connect themselves to the roots. So the plants will actually root out deeper. Now they've got the mycorrhizals and their own roots pulling in nutrients and water. And so they do, and then the mycorrhizal colonies need the roots. So there's a symbiotic thing that they do together. And if you have that in your yard, sometimes you'll see in a compost pile, in an organic, a raised bed, you'll see this white powdery clump, those are mycorrhizal colonies. Whenever I see those are like magic. I take those and sprinkle them out and I put them around my gardens and I just spread it out so they'll grow elsewhere too. But you can also just buy it in a bottle. Here at Waters Garden Center called Aqua Boost Crystals. There you go. So that's kind of what I do. Let's cover bugs. We have enough time. We've got 8 minutes. Let's cover bugs, things to look at. Any questions on how to plant?
I have a question not about planting, but those big trees, can you keep pruning them at the top so they'll still have a nice...
Good question, yeah. So her question was, can you top them to keep them formed nicely? So what they used to say was, take this tree, do I have a small one? Pull this one out. There's a big thing on fruit trees. They go, oh, your grandparents would come in, they go, oh, I'm going to top it right here. They cut that sucker right in half. Here's what we found really works through university testing. We've actually watched this stuff. The more foliage mass you have on the tree, the more photosynthesis can happen, and the more roots it will form. So the first year, leave all the leaves should be left on. Don't top it. We've actually trained our trees. Our trees are older anyway. All of our fruit trees, they're at least 5 to 7 years old. That's how old they have to be to start fruiting. People don't come to Waters Garden Center to buy a whip. They're not coming for value. They're coming for value, not for price. They want it to fruit now. Now I don't want to wait 3, 4, 5 years. I want it to fruit now. So we bring in trees that are purposely older. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're going to fruit this year for you. They'll fruit right in the racks. And so we've been able to shape them because we've had them in the farm longer than other places. This one, I'm 6'1". I do not like to duck when I'm walking through my yard. So every single tree is pruned up above at 6'2" or above. There's no science to this whatsoever. It's purely because that's what I want. If you're 5'9", fine, go to 5'9". It doesn't matter. Just go where it's easy to maintain, rake, trim, prune, hang up, a bird feeder, make it right for you. You'll see all kinds of stuff on the internet on what's right, what's wrong. What's right is what's comfortable for you in your yard. On my evergreens, spruce and pine, they'll grow right to the ground and they'll kind of trail the ground. I cut those off. I don't want them right on the ground. I want it where I can get a rake underneath there and kind of rake underneath. Yes, the swooping branches go towards the ground, but that last one I prune off, just so it's easier for me to maintain. Now I can take a blower and go, and blow all those leaves out and I'm all done. I'm not sure my quail are quite as happy, but I'm happier. And that's all that meant. So there's some fudge fact. This is gardening. You can change it the way you want. I would say if you're in a windy area, you folks in the valley area, there's a prevailing wind that just blows all the time. Up on the ridge lines, it's gale force. If you're planting a tree, make sure you stake it for at least 1 year. No more than 2 years. Take those stakes off as soon as you can. Here's what to do. You put a stake on either side of the root ball. Tie one time to the trunk. You want it to move. You just don't want it to lay over. Okay, so you'll see the neighbors that didn't stake their trees. You'll see them leaning to the northeast. They're just all leaning the same way. Well, if it's a fruit tree, it'll load up with fruit and it'll just literally fall over. Or if it's an evergreen and it's leaning, come March, we'll get these real heavy, wet snows. It'll load up with snow and just fall right over. So you want to stake it for about a year, and then the trunk is put on an extra ring of growth, and the tree is solidified, and it'll hold itself up. What I'll tell my clients is, when the next year, maybe cut it off the stakes. Leave the stakes there, but cut it off. Let it go through a windstorm, see how it does. If it handles it, then break those stakes off. The stakes are the hard part to get in the ground. So if you until you know, keep them there, because it takes a stake driver and some forearm muscle or something, and they're hard to get in the ground. Why not just test it before you break them off? That makes sense? Okay. Good question. So I went off on this multiple tangents, but you brought things to mind. No, don't top it. keep the leaves on. And then I'll prune them up every winter. I'll take a brack, I'll take a branch, I'll take and I'll just slowly over the years prune it up until I can walk underneath them. And then I'm going, okay, you can grow the way you want. And by then the scaffolding or the structure of the plant is coming together, it'll just grow by itself. Okay. Most of our trees, the reason you would want to buy a tree from Waters Garden Center, we've already taken the time to train that plant. We don't just plant it, grow it for a year, and then sell it. We're actually taking it, holding it on for an extra year or 2 or 3, and shaping that plant so that we're probably not going to need to train the plant as much. Like sometimes you'll see, do I have any? Let's see if I can show this off. This is always confusing to folks. Yeah, this got one. You'll see here, so this is a grafted tree. Pretty much all of our trees are grafted. So at the bottom, how much time are we doing? Now I'm going to go over time. This is a grafted tree. You'll see right here there's a bark change. So this bark looks different than this. That's because we took a rootstock that is adapted for clay soil. We're taking a specific kind of root for here. And then we're grafting this preferred tree. We got the perfect tree. We're taking a branch. We'll graft it onto here. Now we'll grow it on for, this is probably about 7, 8 years old. Maybe 10, somewhere in there from that stage on. So you'll see this graft, but as it's growing, as it's maturing, as it's thickening the bark, you'll see also some grafts up here. I don't know if I can get this where you'll see some white tape. I don't know if you all can see. You see that white tape right there? That's a secondary graft. What will happen is trees grow into this, it'll put all of its energy into this one whip, one branch. So you got to cut that off to force it to start branching out. So, but we don't want to lose its shape. So we'll cut it off. Then we'll take another branch from here and graft it up here so we can keep the form but have it be more shapely. So if you'll see that, that's actually an extremely desirable thing. So that means an artist has actually gone through and tried to shape how this plant is going to grow, and yet still get you a nice big trunk. So, okay, we're into, hopefully.
We just bought a home and it's 4 years old, and the aspen tree is a good size, but it's all dried up. All the leaves are dry and crunchy, and so are our neighbors. We didn't know if it was underwater, overwater.
Good.
Or just
So,
a lot.
yeah, probably. So, just for those folks online and the folks up front, aspen tree, 4 years old, probably. The house is 4 years old. We don't know when the aspen was, but it's got some size to it. But the leaves have shriveled up and dried. Why? I don't know. Probably it's going to be, most likely, because it's been so hot. And just knowing the age of the house, when it was planted, probably it's got a drip system going to it. But the drip system has never been maintained or tuned up. So it hasn't been expanded. So now you got this bigger tree, but it's still, the drip system is still set up for an original planting. So probably we need to expand and tee off where that one emitter is, tee off and maybe put 2 emitters. Or if you got 2 emitters, maybe 4 emitters, because it's probably a watering thing. So it didn't have enough moisture and it got so hot and it's been dry. So the plant literally just dried up. So what I do with my gardens, this is just my gardens in general, especially my trees. I've got a pretty nice yard. You walk in and go, this guy might own a garden center. You'd probably be right. What I'll do in May, June, and July, usually 3 months will do it for me. I have done it in August this year because I've only seen really a couple of good storms and the soil's still pretty dry. Well, I'll just take my hose and I get a cheesy, easy fan spray on the end. I'll take it up to that part of the garden and I just turn it on for like 3 or 4 hours. Once a month. I don't do it very often. I don't like to do it at all. What I'm doing is I'm supplementing my drip irrigation to just kind of hydrate that surrounding soil so I can get through until the monsoons hit. That seems to be a game changer for my gardens. It keeps them looking robust. So I just did the strawberry beds. They were just wilty. You could tell they were dry. And I'm so thirsty. I went, okay, let me just take out my hose. You drag out like 40 foot of hose because it's down there. And I just ran it And then everything gets watered while I'm there. I just go with the shrubs, the trees, everything in that part of the garden. I'm trying to hydrate the landscape, not just the plant at that point. And then that seems to get them through till the rains come. That might be a trick, just in the interim. Tune up the irrigation and then maybe supplement. The driest months are May, June, and July. Usually we have no rain. Or if we do, it's like less than an inch. It's bone dry. We'll get 3, 4, 5, I think it's almost 5 inches of rain in August and September per month. We get all of our rain at the same time in seasons. March is a very wet month, and August and September is a very wet months. So you need to fill in the gaps some. That too, this is a tremendous time to plant. I can't think of a better, this is the peak window for planting trees and shrubs. The soil is warm, the days are cool, you don't have all this new growth, it's all this mature growth, so they're much more robust. You can get a whole bunch of root growth now to the end of the year. And then you double down, next spring you'll get more root growth, and so next spring that'll look fantastic. But here's the one caveat. If you're planting now, make sure that you're watering in the winter. This is a big rookie mistake I find a lot of folks make. You're going to water at least once, maybe twice a month in the winter, especially for things that are planted in the fall. What happens is their roots, though, are going to root out of probably a foot or more this fall, but it's not quite mature level. So it doesn't have as much moisture capacity from the soil, the support from the soil, and so you want to supplement that. Otherwise, we'll get what's called winter kill or winter burn. This goes for hedgerows, anything in your landscape. If we don't get a major snowstorm, major rain in January, you should be out there manually watering things or manually turning your drip system on, or you should be watering your things out there. Okay, that'll really be a game changer for you. In the back.
So I was reading that if you take some old fruit or rotten fruit, chop it up and spray it around the area, it's good. But is there too much of that? Is there a correct way to do that?
Yeah, it attracts rats. So, okay, the question was, composted fruit, which is an organic, great stuff. You can't almost get enough, actually. You can't get too much. But what I would rather do, I'd rather put it in my compost pile, do it that way. Take the compost and I'll spread that out. I do actually go through in the month of October. If you're part of our newsletter, part of our garden club, you get a weekly newsletter. When it's time, when I start doing it in my gardens, I write about it and I share it with friends. I'll go out and put shredded bark around my gardens. I like shredded cedar bark because it repels bugs, that kind of stuff. The problem with fruits is they attract voles or field mice and rats. And rats are a real problem. And not just rats. We're not talking southern rats. We're talking like pack rats. They're like the size of small cats, squirrel size on steroids. They're that big, beady eyes, long tail. Look like they want to suck on your jugular vein. They're just big rats. Those great big nests you'll see in the manzanitas or the oaks. You'll see these great big wood piles of sticks. Those are pack rats. If you were to take all that thing apart, which I've done, yes, I have a obsessive compulsive disorder sometimes, especially when it comes to rats. I pulled that whole thing apart, and there were 3 bird nests underneath that. They're beautiful. They're just beautiful bird nests. Prettier than a bird's nest in there. So it was a family of rats living underneath all these sticks. And they were into my hot tub. They were into my barbecue grill. They strip the wires in your car. They're getting the attic and strip the wires from the attic. I've had to rewire a house before. They're not good. They're not your friend. So I don't want to attract more of those. That's the thing. So I go on. You get me on derail with different stories. I've had different garden stories. And I could go for days. Yeah.
What are your recommended fruit trees for this area?
So the recommended fruit trees for the area. So that list will be coming to. That's on the top 10 list. It'll tell you. But it's apples, pears, cherries, peaches, apricots, plums. No citrus. No avocados. It's too cold in the winter here. They just die. But we can grow fig. When you get the right kind of fig, you can do those. Blackberries and raspberries, over the top this year. Cherries, more cherries you know what to do with this year. Apples and pears are kind of the go-to start with those because they bloom the last in spring. I've got a whole class of nothing but fruit trees, so I don't want to go very deep. But Apples and pears bloom the latest in spring, so they're less likely to get frosted out. So they're much more consistent. And this is a very good apple and pear year. There's lots of apples and pears this year. It's kind of exciting. It made my mouth water. It must be close to lunch or something. I didn't have breakfast.
So when will you give that class on fruit trees?
Fruit trees. So, okay. I'll have a class on fruit trees in the spring, because spring's when a lot of fruit trees go in. Quite honestly, you're better off putting them in now. I've got fruit trees. It's just there's more interest in fruit trees in the spring. If you go to our YouTube channel, which we just passed 1.7 million views, it's crazy. I don't know how we get this. Just type in fruit trees and the last class will pop up. This class will show up here in about 3 days up on our YouTube channel. So if you missed out, you can go back and see. It's kind of a reference. That's how we get all the views. So look for that. Yeah.
What kind of a tree would you recommend to replace Alberta spruce that has been spider mited?
Yeah, spider mites. Spider mites on evergreens. Spider mites, they're come on. Talk to me. Talk to me. Ah, it didn't like that question. I don't know what it is, but it's spooky. Anyway, Alberta spruce. It's this beautiful little evergreen. Looks like a teddy bear. Goes up about head high, about this chubby little thing. It's beautiful. Spider mites do like it. Spider mites get on our native junipers. They just show up. You know, see this spider web kind of on the evergreens? But no spiders. That's spider mites. They come in, they strip the foliage. They have an interesting mouth part. They just destroy it one cell at a time. And they just strip the tree of all of its living tissue. And they like the taste of Alberta spruce. So what to do if you want an evergreen juniper? Juniper, certain varieties, we'll show you which ones. I like Taylor, Blue Arrow.
They're short?
They're all short, yeah. So there's some varieties, or shrubs. Spider mites are less prone to get into shrubs than they are to, look at that, they poked me again. They less likely to get onto shrubs than Albertas. Albertas, they do like that. If you do see that, was it going to go into bugs? I'll treat, if you wanted to keep it in there, you could treat it with this every spring, and it would get rid of spider mites. This is Plant Protector. If you've got evergreens, especially right now, pine, spruce, we're seeing hips beetle or bark beetle. Can get underneath. There's a little tiny beetle. It gets in the bark and eats the cambium layer of pine trees. We created this years ago for that specific bug in pine scale and pinyon pines. So if you see that, you could sprinkle this. It's right at the base. Mix it in a watering can. You could do it yourself, and the plant will actually absorb it. You take out spider mites, bark beetle, and one application a year does it. It seems this really, we sell this mainly for evergreens. It works on other stuff, but Plant Protector really, it's a soil systemic basically. With that, we've gone 10 minutes over. I apologize. If you're engaged, I'll put my mask on. You all can do the same. And if I didn't get to your questions, we can just converse here for a moment, and we'll just go, and I'll stay as long as you all want. You seem okay? But before you go, you folks online, I'll let you clap. Go ahead in your chair right now. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Where did my mask go? There we are.